In the darkest nights, we find our light. Battered souls, but we won't lose sight. Surviving together, never alone. Through every trial, we carry on. Surviving together, never alone. Through every trial, we carry on. Surviving together, we stand tall. United forever. Strength and courage will overcome. Oh, surviving together, victorious, never, never alone. Hand in hand, we'll face the unknown.
We see you, we hear you, and we believe you. Hey everyone, how you doing tonight? Welcome to Surviving Together, a safe space for trauma survivors to connect and build community on their healing journeys, as well as providing trauma-related education for all. We have a wonderful show for you tonight. Should be very interesting with our very special guest, Sammy Yarbro of After the Bars, and I'll bring him up in just a second. But thank you guys for being here, all who are here right now. It looks like Tommy Stiggs dropped in, says I have an incredible show. And we have Kim from My Other's Keeper, who is lurking, and she's going to be listening. Lynn Arundel. Lynn, it has been a long time. So happy to have you here. And Crystal is here saying hi to everybody. So welcome, guys. Looks like we've got a few more who are lurking in the shadows as well. And we have Grateful in the house. How are you doing, Grateful? Thank you guys for joining me. I know we're a little bit later than we normally are. Sammy had some things to do, and I ended up having to take a phone call from a friend of mine whose brother slammed into a tree head on in a car accident. So dealing with that. So let's send hugs and love out to just anyone who needs it tonight. You know, this could be a difficult show to listen to. I am going to put up our trigger warning once we get started, just because we're going to be talking about mental health and drug dependency and another unfortunate car accident. So it's just hugs and love to everybody out there who needs it. Crystal, all I know right now is he is stable, but he is in ICU. So, but he's conscious. So that's a good thing. So my guess is they're probably looking for internal injuries and whatnot. So I'm going to bring up Sammy right now. And let's welcome him to the stage. Hey, Sammy, how you doing? Sammy's with After the Bars.
Hi, how are you tonight?
I'm doing excellent, excellent. Thank you, Crystal. Good. Yes, he could definitely use all the prayers. We'll see. Jen, a friend of mine, brother slammed into a tree. He had a car accident, and he is in ICU. So it's just a friend of mine, nobody from our community, but yeah, kind of very unfortunate. So very unfortunate situation. So sending hugs and love and prayers, good vibes, whatever you guys do or feel in this universe, out to him and his family for that. So. But tonight we are going to be talking about prison trauma, mental health, recovery, just kind of all sorts of subjects we're going to be touching on with Sammy, and to hear his story. And so welcome. Just a few more hellos here to Shannon, Jen Marie, they're here, Indigo, Rick. If I don't say hi to you when you enter, I apologize. Sometimes when we get talking, it's a little more difficult to acknowledge just people coming in. So,
it is.
But if you have any specific questions for Sammy, things that you want to know, please put a Q in the chat in front of your question. If you have a comment that you want to be recognized, not just, you're talking to somebody else in the chat type of thing, but if you have a comment you want to be recognized in regards to what we're talking about, put a C in front of that, and I will definitely try and bring that up. If I don't bring it up on time, I'll definitely be starring comments kind of behind the scenes too. So it's ready to get into it, Sammy?
Yeah, yeah. Luckily, I know I told you, but I just left therapy, so this is I'm in good shape to talk about trauma.
Get it all out there, and now
Yeah,
you're going to come and kind of go through your entire life story with it. So, well, why don't we, as we said before, we were talking backstage a little bit, kind of outlining for the show. Why don't you just kind of tell us a little bit about your childhood and your early teen years and what that was like for you?
Sure. I grew up mostly in southern Los Angeles in Redondo Beach, Manhattan Beach, Hermosa Beach, that area. But my family moved around a lot, so we would, my parents, they got divorced when I was 5, and at that time my dad had moved us to Ohio, and when we lived in Ohio, hold on, we'll get this out of the way.
No problem. Hi, Paisley. How are you?
Good.
Good. I hear you didn't have school.
Yeah, I skipped school.
She skipped school today.
Because I always never ever wake up in time.
Oh my goodness, you sound just like my
Last
son.
minute. But we're gonna change her schedule tonight, so she's gonna get to bed earlier. And
Great. Well, you only have a few more weeks? 3 more weeks of school? That's not much. You can do that.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
3 or like 2, 3 or 2.
2 or 3? That sounds about right. You can do that. Right?
Because we're
Tough it out.
175. Yeah, 175 days of school.
Okay.
Wow. Oh, total. You're right, actually. You're right. In total, I would bet, because we have to have 170 days minimum for the kids for it to be counted as a school year.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, because you have snow days and stuff.
Yeah. They kind of build in some stuff
Talk
with
about
that.
serious adult stuff. I know, honey.
Can I only just hang out?
I'll call you back in, babe. Okay? I'm positive. It's a serious show tonight.
Yeah, we're going to talk about a lot of adult stuff, but
it's stuff you don't want to hear, honey.
It's stuff that I do want to hear.
Yeah, probably. Okay. I will call you back in, though, okay?
No, you won't.
Yeah, I will. I'll go, hey, Slay.
Why are things on fire?
I'm not lying. She's mad. I want to say yes to her to everything, and it's
hard. Yeah.
It is, because I just, I love her to death.
Absolutely.
Anyways, yeah, at least I wasn't too far into the trauma stuff, but
yeah, it just
you
move around.
What I learned to be trauma eventually. Anyways, so my dad had us living in Ohio at that time with his job, and that's when my parents got their first divorce, and so then we moved back to LA. And I was only 5 and 6 years old at that time. But we moved around a lot in Los Angeles in that area, from it just, different apartments, or, had a house for a little bit and then an apartment. And then my parents got remarried, and then we ended up in Michigan for a little bit, in Grand Blanc, Michigan. And yeah, we loved it there. And then we were about 8 years old, 9 years old. And I say it was me and my little brother, who's just a year younger than me.
Okay.
And then it wasn't working out, and they got a second divorce.
That must have been tough.
Yeah, it was. The second one was easier because they kind of like came to me and my brother and it's like, hey, how are you guys feeling? And we were like, look, this is not working for you guys. Even at that age, we knew,
You're
like,
right. Just like this. Yeah.
let's just end this. And that's what we did. And so we moved back to LA. And so basically from like 9 or 10, I lived in LA for the rest of my life. And then just moved around a lot, in LA also, LA is pretty big, but we never really like left the county. Just, moved from, like North Hollywood to the beach areas to Venice and just kind of moved around a lot. But it was pretty good. My mom met my stepdad and they were good. They were really happy and, they were, growing and, I entered high school and, I was at the same school for the most part. I did for behavior stuff, I used to get real bored with school and, I know like a lot of us did. And, so I would ditch, but, I'd always do good on tests. And so, I was able to like, progress, grade to grade. And, but I ended up going to a continuation school. That's what they call them in Los Angeles. And then you either accelerate there or you completely just drop out of school. It's like the step before dropping out. But I ended up accelerating because they let you go at your own pace. So I was like, okay, cool. So I just accelerated and ended up graduating a year early from high school. Yeah.
I think
so
you
that was
need to
cool.
mute me on what other channel you have because I can hear
Me?
myself through. Yeah.
Oh, I'll just turn down this stuff. I'll just turn down the speaker a little bit. Is that better?
Let's see. You don't have another stream going?
Me? No.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Nope. I don't. Do you have well, you're doing what you normally do. So
yeah, I don't have anything else going. So I don't know why it's
Yep.
feeding back to you.
Are you hearing your voice twice?
Yeah. I hear mine as I'm talking now, and then I hear it coming through you.
Yeah, I barely have my speakers on at all. Like I can barely hear it now. But
okay. You guys can.
How do they hear it?
That's what I'm just asking. Janet doesn't hear it at all. Jen hears it just a little bit. So maybe it's just louder on my end. So as long as it's not disruptive to you guys then, and Lynn says it's all good from here. Okay, cool.
Okay, but You're good?
Yep.
Okay.
No worries.
And so yeah, so I accelerated through high school and I was good. I smoked weed maybe a couple of times. I did do cocaine for like a really minute time with my friend Steve. He's in our chat sometimes and after the bars. And he's an electrical engineer now and he's doing really good. And we just experimented. It was when it was called freebase. Crack wasn't even really a thing yet. And we just like freebased cocaine a couple of times and realized that it was dumb. And that was it. I didn't do any drugs at all. Like I worked in the movie industry for a little bit, for Raleigh Studios as a grip, and Paramount Studios. I was a grip for them for a little bit, working on movies and commercials and music videos. I worked on that Weezer video, the one where they're like at a Happy Days restaurant at Arnold's from Happy Days. Ooh, wee, ooh, I look just like. I worked on that video. And so was doing some fun stuff, was living in Hollywood. I was drinking a lot at that time. And I met a girl and we got married. And her mom gave me an old computer and I tried to upgrade that computer. And I realized it was expensive to upgrade it. So I wanted to just do it myself. Anyways, I ended up picking up computers pretty fast.
Oh,
And
interesting.
yeah, now so I went back to school to get my systems engineer for Microsoft. And so then I left the movie industry to work in the computer industry, in information technology. And I first worked for AT&T as a certified systems engineer. And then I helped out. There was a bunch of guys. I've told this story before. There was a bunch of, computer geeks standing around the system. They're trying to figure out the fix for it. No one could figure it out. And I was just waiting to go to lunch with one of the engineers there. He was a Cisco engineer. His name was Kerry Voth. And I was just waiting to go to lunch with them, but I was like listening to the issue. Well, anyways, I ended up solving the problem so we could hurry up and get to lunch. And 3 days later, I had this big invitation to go to work for Microsoft after that. So that was pretty cool. I felt pretty happy with myself and accomplished, and all the things. And yeah, so
Pretty
I
stable
did
at
that.
point.
Really stable. I was a workaholic. I guess, yeah, if I played the tapes backwards now, or played, if I replay the tapes now from that time, I was a workaholic. I've worked on this in therapy of like how I treated my wife at that time. I just wasn't really, I just wasn't very present for her.
Mm-hmm.
And, like I told her one year that what's the use of having a Christmas tree? We're never home. I'm never home. We're never here at the same time. And that was like her favorite holiday. And I told her no. And she ended up spending the holidays with her parents. But anyways, she went to visit her sister. Her sister was going to school up in Seattle at an art school there called Cornish. I always think it's either Cornish or Corning. I can never remember, but it's in Seattle. And we were supposed to go see her play. She was in a play up there, and I was too busy to go. I was doing a big project. It's when Washington Mutual bought out Great Western Bank, and so we were doing all the reintegrations for all their systems and their campuses. And I wasn't able to make it. And she was in a car accident involving a drunk driver. And she was taken from me and her family in a car accident. Her sister was fine, just a little banged up, but my wife was killed in that accident. And then after that, what's that?
This is in what year?
1998.
Okay.
1998. And so I took an absence of leave from work to grieve, and I just never stopped grieving. I was on the fetal position on my couch for like 30 days. And one of the guys who used to work with me, so we have like these big they call them labs, like a laboratory, but they're like computer labs. And I had a bunch of, they're called A+ technicians that worked like under me. And one of the guys, they were like, gamer guys, or, a lot of them skateboarded like I did too. And one of the guys used to check on me. He would come to the house and check on me just to make sure I was okay. He knew me and my wife, and we used to go out to dinner all the time. And he used to check on me, and like in the fourth week, that's why I always say, I was in the fetal position for 30 days, because I remember the day I was not in the fetal position. He had gave me some speed, and it was the first time I had ever done speed, and it was actually crank, which has become like crystal meth now. And he gave me some crank, put it in my little orange juice. Do you remember those orange juices you get? You peel back the tin foil
Yeah, like you got at McDonald's or whatever.
Yeah, it was from McDonald's. They were like kind of like had like, riveted edges or
Yep,
ribbed
I know
edges.
exactly what you're talking about. Yep.
Yeah. It was one of those. And he was like, "Hey, I put some speed in your orange juice to get you off this goddamn couch," is what he said.
Oh wow.
And I'm thinking, speed that we would took in high school, like the little over the counter, mini thins. They were like ephedrine hydrochloride. And
And
I
like
thought,
Nodos or
yeah, like
something like that.
Nodos, but not like the caffeine part. But yeah, it's something like that. And I'm like, yeah. And I drank it. And I mean, literally an hour later, I was in my bathroom shaving, cleaning up. Like I felt so euphoric.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked about this before. Like, had I been just say like this was like my normal, and had I, like been at a party drinking or something, like at a get together, and someone to give me like a line of speed, it never happened, but let's just say it had,
Mm-hmm.
and like I'm here and I do like a line of speed. So like it takes me to here, say, like I'm pretty, feeling good or whatever. But what had happened with me is I was way down here from my normal, and
Right.
that speed took me up to here, and it was such an enormous jump of mood and of neurotransmitter release
Yeah. It allowed you to
that
function.
there was no way I ever wanted to live after that without that.
Yeah.
I mean, instantly addicted. Like I called the guy like 2 days later and was like, "Where can I get more of that?" And he was cool like the first 2 times of doing that. But when he noticed it was like I wanted more, like
Mm-hmm.
what can I get for $500? What can I get for $1,000? He was like, nope. He just said, "No way, Jose. I'm not, he's like, he goes, "I regret even, turning you onto it." I actually spoke to him years later, and like he says that's one of his biggest life regrets was ever putting that speed in my orange juice that morning.
Wow, I bet
Yeah,
that's gotta
yeah, he
be
talks about
knowing
it
what
in his
happened to you.
yeah, he talks about it in his recovery story, and it was a big deal for him, and a big deal for me too. Like
Yeah.
it changed my life completely.
Hugs and love for your loss too.
What's that?
I
Yeah,
said
I
hugs
appreciate
and
that.
love for your loss.
I appreciate that.
I mean, I know you've dealt with it now, but it was hard for you for a long, long time, right?
It absolutely was. I grieved for 22 years.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was not until 4 years ago that I was able to finally understand what it was to lose her, and why I used drugs after that to just push it down. And I thought I had been over it, but really I was living in that grief for that entire time.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
yeah. And I would say after the first year that it was kind of self-indulgent, and sometimes people don't understand what I mean when I say that, but like I kind of use that to just beat myself up and to feel shitty about my life, or about the decisions I've made, where I had ended up
Mhm.
eventually. So so when he had said no, I ended up that first day that I did the speed and the orange juice, I'd end up going to a local strip bar. I lived in Hollywood at the time, and I ended up going to this place called the Seventh Veil. It was a pretty famous place, and I met this girl from North Carolina, and I kind of had told her my story. Yeah, I lost my wife, and I'd been drinking for the last 30 days, and I did some speed, and of course her and all her girlfriends had been doing crank for their entire lives, and she knew where I could get more once he told me I couldn't get any from him.
Mm.
And and, you know, and I had money because, you know, I had a good job and my credit was good, and I was living off my credit cards at the time, and what Microsoft had been paying me. But eventually Microsoft was wondering when I was coming back, and I said I wasn't. And so they gave me a little bit of a severance, you know, like a, you know, see you later alligator money. And I lived off that, and my credit cards, the first like 5 months of my, you know, drug career. And I'd met some pretty interesting people along that little time. And I met a guy who ended up saying, you know, like, if you can, because I was selling to all the strippers, you know, like I, you know, to pay for my habit, I was selling to them and to like all the drag queens that worked the area. I was selling to them just to pay for my habit because my money was running out, you know.
We have a question from the chat. Kim asks, was there any survivor's guilt? Was that part of why it was taking you?
Well, there was. And I realized that later, that I hadn't even gone. I mean, really the survivor's guilt was like almost immediate. But I didn't know what that was, you know, why I was feeling that guilt. I knew, I blamed myself that I wasn't there, that I should have been driving, that I would have went down a different street.
Yeah.
You know, whatever the case may be. And at her funeral, her dad had basically said, you know, that I'm the biggest piece of shit for not being there, and just totally blame me at our wedding.
Oh my God.
And in our wedding video, there's this part where the guy who's doing our wedding video comes around and like interviews us, you know, and he, when they interviewed my father-in-law had said, you know, you better protect her with your life, you know, basically. And I said, of course I will, you know.
So he was lashing out.
Oh yeah. He lashed out big time. And, you know, I never spoke with them ever again, ever.
Wow.
And we were all really close, but they, you know, they blamed me and I blamed myself. So, you know, I wasn't mad at them for blaming me. You know,
because you were doing it too.
Yeah. I just took my lumps, put my head down, and, you know, and said, yeah, you're right. You know, I'm sorry. What else can I say? I didn't know what else to say.
It's so hard to get through things when we don't have the words for our feelings, and, you know, to be able to identify those things. If you've never been educated on any of that and you don't have any sort of context to put it into, you're just kind of drifting through trying to figure things out. And I can see easily how that would become like a seminal moment where you can blame everything else and you go, oh, it always comes back to this, you know, everything that's kind of following out of that. So you just got into the drug sales just because of your habit to just fund things, just to be able to keep going with the speed at that point.
Yeah, I remember the first time my credit card got denied, and that had never happened to me ever. And my credit card getting denied, I'm like, wait a minute, I have like 30 grand on that card, you know?
Right.
No way that it's getting denied. And I realized that everything was getting maxed out. And I knew I had to do something. I was already kind of giving away the drug to people. You know, sometimes people give me, you know, oh no, here's $40, you know. I'm like, oh no, yeah, it's cool. And you kind of know how I am. That's just kind of like, well, I mean, maybe you do. I don't know. But, you know, I'm just kind of like, oh, no. Just don't worry about it. You know, but that had to change because I knew I had to supply my habit because I was completely addicted. I tried to, someone had said, you know, you're like one of us. And I was like, no, I'm not. You know, I can quit this anytime. And I didn't even make it 5 hours, you know?
Yeah.
You know, I had no reason to quit. You know, it was this kind of like someone saying, no, you're one of us. Cause I kind of like not look down on everybody, but, you know, I felt like I was better than everyone else because I wasn't, you know,
You had had
I
a
was,
stable job. You had been at Microsoft.
yeah,
You were just doing
uh,
this to get through. Is
yep,
that kind of what you were thinking of that? Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. I used to tell, because that stripper ended up being my girlfriend. And I used to tell her, I was like, you're not going to do this forever. I'm going to go back to work and we'll be fine. And that never even came close to happening. But the so I started selling drugs, and that just grew and grew and grew. And with my grandiose look about myself, that I thought I was smarter than everyone else, that I was more put together than everyone else, that I was going to be the best drug dealer that these streets had ever seen. And I was like, yeah, give me as much as you want, as you can. You can trust me. I'm not like these other people ripping you off. And he trusted me, and I never ripped him off, not one time. And he was like, yeah, you know what, whatever you need, you got. And so I started branching out to people I had known in other states. That it was so funny how many people in my life that I knew that actually used this drug, or knew somebody that used the drug. And it wasn't even like that big of a deal then. It was really bizarre. Like, it wasn't called meth yet. And it was called crank. It was called speed.
Mm-hmm.
It was real, like, and it was bizarre. I remember reaching out to my buddy in Montana, and I was like, hey, I go, if I don't mean to offend you, but if you know anyone that would want to buy this. And he's like, are you talking about like crank? I'm like, yeah. He's like, dude, I'll buy some. And I was like, well, what does it go for? And he was like, oh, it's like, 2,500 an ounce up here. And I was like, that was it, because I was getting it for like 300 an ounce in California.
Oh,
And I was
there's
blown
a
away.
profit margin. Yeah.
Yeah. So fast forward, I'm drug trafficking to Montana, and then to Colorado. And that was just like my little run. I would go back and forth. And eventually that had to come to an end, because I was smart, like with money, and buying it and making sure that my connect got paid, but I wasn't smart on knowing who to trust. I basically trusted everybody. These were bikers. There's no way they would tell on me, or these people, they have a Corvette and a house, and they're buying quantities from me, and of course they would never tell on me. And when it all came crashing down, because I trusted everybody, and when it all came crashing down, almost everybody turned on me.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was a really bizarre feeling, one that I didn't really get over for like a long time.
So how many years were you selling for before you got your first
About
arrest for it?
almost 2 years, but they got onto me about like the third month that I was selling.
Oh.
Yeah, because I was out there, I didn't hide it. I drove around with it. I wasn't afraid to get pulled over, because I license registration. I looked pretty normal, in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
No one ever searched my car. I would speed around town with it. And but yeah, they were onto me pretty quickly, and they were busting everybody around me, and I was actually bailing people out of jail even. And thinking, hey, I'll bail you out of jail, just give me a chance before you turn on me. And they're like, oh yeah. And I would bail them out of jail just to do a control buy. They would do there was a couple of times I would bail someone out of jail, and they would do a control buy that same night on me. They had already been working with the feds after, when they got busted.
So
And
you didn't know any of that was happening in the background, and
I didn't know any of that was happening. No.
oh, wow.
So yeah, pretty crazy.
So what was it, like 2002 that you got arrested, something like that then, or?
I got arrested on a little state charge in 99 up in Montana for, I had did some bad check stuff with somebody. But I basically got out of that. And so, yeah, it was 2000. I was indicted in 2001. And then, but at the same time, I had to go back to state prison in Montana because I had violated that probation. So they made me do state time there and then release me to my federal stuff.
Okay.
And that ended up being around 2004.
Okay.
Yep.
So you're selling drugs and I was going to law school.
You and my brother both were probably in law school at the same time.
Oh my gosh.
He was in law school in 2004. 2003, 2004, he was in law school.
I was from 98 to 2001.
Oh, okay.
So
yep.
Just a little bit earlier than him.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So when you went to prison, I mean, you had never had any experience with prison before. It's not like you had been in and out when you were a kid or anything. I mean, What was that culture shock really like for you?
Yeah, I was a square, going in, I'd become kind of a street guy. Just, Tupac has this saying, and someone told me this a long time ago. He's like, if you're from Los Angeles, even if you're a square, you got a little bit of gangster in you, so like, and it's kind of true. Like when I first, went to prison, I was a square for real. The old heads, they could smell it. They knew I was completely green. But like the guys like my age, I knew enough of the street talk and of the drug lingo and to sell myself as like I was one of them. Like I'd been in and out of jail my entire life, and not that I ever had to like say that. No one really even talked about it, but
because you like knew some gangbangers growing up, right? I mean, you weren't part of a gang, but you like associated with people. So
with Mexican gangs. Mexican gangs. My grandmother, she was Mexican, and she grew up in a really like her neighborhood was all Hispanic, and she she had some apartment buildings, and she only rented to people from Mexico, and she would help them with job applications and getting their green cards,
Oh, wow.
Their I-551 cards. I remember always seeing the I-551 applications around her house all the time. She was really respected in our neighborhood. They called her Doña Eva, and she was really respected. So by just being her favorite nieto, which is grandson, no one, messed with me. I was like the token white kid,
Right.
But a couple times, they, talked about me, being a part of them, and because, but I didn't live with my grandmother all the time, but I did live with her, back and forth sometimes. When I was in like high school, I would go live with my grandmother, but she lived in Hollywood. So it wasn't like, it was like I moved away to live with my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
I could live with her and, still have dinner with my mom and dad, and maybe spend the night there.
Pretty close.
Yeah, it was that close. But I was hip to like, what a Sereno was, into the culture. So I wasn't a complete square when I went in, but I wasn't like a lifer, criminal, guy. So, yeah.
So how did you adapt?
Yeah. So I adapted pretty fast. I pretty much faked it. there was a couple little mishaps when I first got in. I remember the first like federal prison I went to. I was just there as a holdover while I was being classified, and or until I was designated to my permanent spot. And this, and I was a pretty big guy, and this blood, he like walked into me in the stairway, and he's like, "Who do you run with?" And I was like, "Oh, I met Matt. I run with Matt," and and that's not what he meant. He meant like, "What gang am I in?" And he just like laughed at me, but I didn't realize that until way later that that's what he meant, And when I played that tape backwards, I was like, "Oh, he was asking me what gang I was in." I was like, "Oh, I'm upstairs."
Thinking like I should have one of those little beanies with the propeller on it,
Yeah. He's
like how
like,
green
"What?"
you are.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice that he just laughed and didn't get really on you about it.
Yeah, I actually was friends with that guy like I was there for 18 months, and I was actually became really good friends with that dude, and he never mentioned the faux pas, he never mentioned like, "Hey, when I first asked you who you ran with, you gave me some corny ass answer." He didn't say anything like that. He just, he was cool, man. He was cool.
So how long were you in the feds for?
I was in there for 13 years, and then 18 years altogether. My sentence was for 200 months. And then,
wow.
Yeah. Yep. For 200 months.
They nailed you.
Yeah. 217 months. It was supposed to be between 200 and 217. I tried to get a downward departure, and it didn't happen. Yeah, I had broke the jaw of one of my one of the people who told on me, and I tried to get a downward departure because, and this is a whole nother long story, but there was some people that got busted in Colorado, and they tried to say, because they knew I was already indicted, they tried to say that the meth that was found in their house was mine, that I had left it there. And I was like, that never happened. I did sell to them, but I never left any drugs there, and they were trying to say that it was mine. And so they approached me and said, my lawyer's like, "Well, hey, there's these dudes down in Colorado saying that these drugs are yours. They've already been found guilty for heroin, but they're going to beat the meth because they're going to end up indicting you on it. And you're already facing these indictments up there. If you go say like, hey, that drug isn't yours, that they was at their house, And so I did that, and I tried to get a downward departure for it. And the prosecutor was like, "No, that he didn't cooperate with us." It was two different U.S. attorneys. Yeah. The U.S. attorney in Colorado saying, "Oh yeah, don't worry, you'll get a downward departure. You just got to say that wasn't yours." I'm like, "Okay," but then the U.S. attorney up here is like, "No, you didn't cooperate. You didn't do enough. You didn't send anyone to prison down there. You got to like really work." And I was like, "Well, I mean, okay, what I mean?" And he goes, "And plus, you broke your co-defendant's jaw up here." He's like, so anyways, I end up not getting it, the downward departure. So yeah, so I ended up getting a bunch of time.
Was there any, from those early years when you were in prison, looking back now, I'm sure you didn't realize it at the time, but was there any instances, or just the fact of being there and being confined and not having, been in it before, is there anything that sticks out to you as, this was starting to cause me some trauma?
Interesting. Well, I'll just say this, like my whole prison career, I didn't feel like there was anything traumatic about it at all. I just felt like everyone's trying to survive. Everyone's getting through this the best they can.
Mm-hmm.
And, some people are bringing, shit on themselves, guys who get stabbed, guys who are, big time rats and getting stabbed or not paying their bills and getting stabbed. And that's on them.
Mm-hmm.
And the guys that are doing it, they're participating in it just how I'm having to participate in it. None of it seemed traumatic. Later, I ended up having to do therapy because I couldn't figure out why I couldn't stay clean when I got out. I realized that almost all of it, all the high security stuff I was at, just waking up in the morning was traumatic for me. And not knowing what the day was going to happen, that day. Just the fear of the unknown, knowing that someone was probably going to get stabbed today, knowing that someone could be me today if, something
Mm-hmm.
happens, or if, whatever, it's the politics with the white gangs in there they're more about killing each other than they
Mm-hmm.
are, in any of the white gangs. No one hardly ever kills another race or has an issue with another race. It's all about internal politics and like who's no good or who didn't pay a bill at that other prison or who checked in for being drunk at this other spot, or all this. It's all about the internal strife. It has
Mm-hmm.
rarely anything to do with about another race. And what I used to always say this when I would get to a new spot, I'd be like, kill Whitey. It was like a joke that I had with my guys, and be like, kill Whitey, because that's all we ever worried about.
Mm-hmm.
Was like what was going on, in our car, in our gang, in our group, in our, whatever.
So I think that most people expect that you witness a lot of violence while you're in prison, but there's also, from what I understand now, that there's violence that's foisted upon you in terms of what you have to do to either fit in or what they call do your work, or
putting in work,
or to defend yourself, whether it's that or whether it's defending yourself. Yep. So you're being put into situations that you don't necessarily want to be in or want to do, that may go against what you feel, but it's just necessary to survive.
At the USPs, which is the high security, they have FCIs, they have FCCs, which is camps, FCIs, which are correctional institutions, mm-hmm. which are mediums, and then they have USPs, which are United States penitentiaries. Those are the high security.
Okay.
Like an idiot, I could have been down in the lows in the camps the whole time had I not started getting write-ups for fighting, for trying to be cool, for tattooing, for joining a gang. Mm-hmm. All these things increased my points so fast at the holdover spot that by the time I got out of the holdover, I was already a medium high going to a high security. And, but had I just not tried to, be cool and fit in and be one of the fellas, I could have avoided all of that, because you don't have to join a gang to make it in the federal system. You just don't. Now, as an independent, you still, as an independent, and if you're in a high security, you still are ran like a gang. Mm-hmm. But in the mediums, in the lows, you don't have to put in work or do all of that. And I messed that up for myself. I ended up having to be at those places where, even if as an independent or as in a gang, which I ended up being in a gang, you have to put in work. Like, as soon as you get there, you're up next. That's what they could say. Hey, mm-hmm. you're up next. You have to prove that you have heart, and it isn't even really about that. It's all about entertainment for the next guy. That's really all it is. It's, we can say, we need to see you have heart. We need
Right.
to know that you ain't going to back down from a fight and be tough. You can say that's what it is. And maybe sometimes once in a blue moon, that is what it is, but it's not. It's all for entertainment. It's so they can like find these little fires and pour gasoline on it, which means make more of it than of what it really is,
Mm-hmm.
and watch some guy crash out. Because if you don't do it, then the guys that are up after you, they get to smash you off the yard, you know? And if it's a no hands policy, which most of them are, then you get to get stabbed for not doing that. So if, most of those places are no hands policies. So that means, it's all knives. There's no, just beating them up with your fists or, stomping them out with your boots, which does happen. And I know you did give a trigger warning about what stuff we're going to talk about. So I'm just letting people know, like, we're getting into some of that stuff, and it can be triggering, but
I just put it up.
Yeah.
So your greenness when you went in ended up costing you because you just didn't have any context to put any behavior in as to what's expected or what's not expected. Or
That's right. I when I first got there, I fell in with some guys who were pretty, for the most part, they were really good guys, I know people be like, what, these guys were claiming to be skinheads, but these guys loved each other, and I fell in with them, because they presented themselves to me like to have my back and to, that they loved me and they were funny and I liked being funny and I liked laughing and, and so that's what it was,
well, I imagine even in a place like that, you're looking for connection. You're looking for, people to be with. I imagine be a very lonely existence if you didn't have any of that.
Yeah. And, the guys that weren't these guys were just, sitting around playing cards all day, and I didn't want to do that, I did do that a lot of my time, but, I liked working out and doing push-ups and, wrestling in the cell and, doing all that, guy stuff. I love doing that. It was fun, talking shit to each other. And,
it's interesting that you mention it as being almost like a form of entertainment. I never really thought about it from that aspect, because I'd always heard about we need to know what you're made of. And so if anything goes down, we know that you'll have our back type of thing. But really, I mean, why do people watch, dramas on television, reality shows, whatever, just to watch what's going to crash and burn next. It's so, I imagine it's the real life version of it. That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah, it's all fake, man. That whole, some of that is real. It's real in like real life and that it happens every day, but like the purpose of it all, the reasoning that these big tough guys have for, or like these gang leaders, you want tough guys on your side, and like look, these guys are tough. They don't have to prove nothing to you, but all that proving yourself and you're up next. It's really, and maybe I have a bad taste in my mouth about it just because I was sent on a bogus mission, all for the humor of one guy, and it ended up getting me and a lot of other guys in trouble with a lot of other gangs, and maybe that's why I have like this disdain for that part of it. Not that I would ever like say that any of it was good or what real life is what the meaning of like of what's real and what's important, but it's it's their world that they've created in there, and they can have it, you know, like I know I'll never go back in there. And it's
Mhm.
not out of fear. It's out of like, I have a bigger purpose for my life than to be a career criminal and, you know, to be a part of like the gangs that are inside federal prison. And, you know, some kids choose that. And a lot of those kids aren't alive anymore. Kids
Yeah.
that I knew and that, yeah, I tell this story about when I first got to a certain prison at USP Hazleton in West Virginia. It's where Whitey Bulger was killed.
Yeah,
And
Hazleton.
yeah, and there was this kid that I was on the plane with, and when we got there, he was so excited. You know, he was a skinhead. He's like, I can't wait. And I was like, you know, I go, man, I'm not even going to tell anyone that I'm even affiliated. I'm just going to try to just do me and do my time. He's like, not me, brother. You know, his name was Country. He was just this big kid. He's from Wyoming. He's like, not me. I'm loud and proud, you know, white power, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, all right, man. Yeah. All
You
right,
do
cool.
you.
Yeah. And he was actually the guy that they tried to put sick on me to stab me when I ended up having to crash out of there. And that's a whole nother like long story. But and he ended up going to another prison and called Big Sandy, which is a ruthless prison. He ended up going to Big Sandy and getting killed his first week there.
Oh my
You know,
goodness.
and just a year and a half before that, I was on a plane with them telling him, not me, man. I'm just going to try to just chill and not even get involved. You know, he's like, not me. I'm loud and proud. And, you know, and he was loud and proud all the way to the grave, you know? Yeah.
At that point, had you already been in the system a while?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'd been in the system like over like 11 years.
Oh, okay. So you kind of more towards the tail end of it. And you're like, I just want to get out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, you know what? There was no way it could have happened. Those guys that were already there knew I was coming because of who I was at other prisons. You know, because I had been a shot caller on one yard, and they knew I was coming, and they were waiting for me. You know, so there's no way I could have been like, oh yeah, no, I'm just an independent guy, and you know, that's what I wanted to do in my heart.
Right.
But yeah, it wasn't happening. Like, yeah, I was at R&D, which is receiving and departure, and where you like get your bedroll and your clothes and stuff. I was at R&D, and they were already, the guy over there was like, oh yeah, hey, Slayer told me to tell you. That's the name of one of the guys, you know. Slayer wanted me to tell you, man, he's happy you're here, and you know, you guys are gonna have some numbers now, and whatever, dude. You know, I was like, fuck.
I'll play my part.
Yeah.
So you ended up spending what, like 18 years total?
Altogether, yeah, 18 years.
Now, were you out for a little while once you had entered feds?
Yep, I'd gotten out in 2013, and I was out for about a year, and then I went back on some violations, and then like on my third violation, this is like 2018. The federal judge was like, yeah, when you get out this time, you're not going back to LA. You're going to stay in Montana. And I was like, okay. I was like, that's not going to work, you know.
My
you know,
life
everyone.
was in LA.
Yeah, my entire life, I had tattoo shops there. My kids were there, and I was like, no, that's not going to work. And I fought it, and she's like, no. She's like, every time you get a violation, it cost me like $13,000 to fly you here, just so I can say you're going back to prison for 3 months or going to treatment or, you know, whatever I decide for you. And we're not doing that anymore. And I was like, okay. So anyways, that's what happened. I ended up having to come back, and I was basically homeless, and I was really worried about, you know, what was going to happen. I got out of prison on my violation. I was on a plane on my way to Montana, and I had already planned that I was just going to, as soon as I got off the plane, I was going to go get drunk and go see my PO, and they were going to see me drunk and send me back to prison so I could discharge my sentence so I could go back home to LA.
Mm.
So I wouldn't have probation anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got off the plane, there was this little old man standing at the gate that had this cardboard sign that said Yarbro. He had my name misspelled. And he had long gray hair, and he had this little dog with him. And it said Yarbro, and I was like looking for a taxi.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked by him, and I was like, what the hell? I said, hey, are you looking for Yarbro? And he's like, yeah, are you Sam? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, hey, I'm Ken. I'm Ken Cottrell. You're going to be living with me. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, your probation officer got a hold of me, and I have a bed for you. And I was like, what? And I instantly started crying. And I was just like, wow, my God, this is like, everything's going to be okay. Now, let me just back up just a little bit. So I had gotten into it with some guys at the prison just before I had left. Nothing political or anything, just about whatever. I can't even remember what it was about. But when I had went to the hole, I was in the hole, and I was just like, God, if you're real, man, please, help me. Because I was tight. This was my third violation to go back for drugs. And I knew I was getting out again. And I knew I was going to be homeless, or I thought I was going to be homeless. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to get drunk and go back because, God isn't helping me. But I had asked for help.
Back up just a little bit more, just so we can fill in the blanks of the story. So when you were getting out and you were doing all those violations, you were still on drugs. Like you had you been clean at all during your?
No, I had no clean time whatsoever.
Okay. Whatsoever. So you were still doing while you were in prison, and then you just kept using while you were out.
Yeah. I tried to get clean, but I think the most I ever had clean was maybe 60 days, 70 days when I was in treatment in Venice Beach. Oh, wow. But I had left, and right when I left, I started drinking again, and then I started using shortly thereafter.
So we're talking a good, couple decades then of you being on drugs at that point.
Yeah. From the time my wife was killed and till 2019.
So that kind of ties into, you're just tired of this merry-go-round.
Tired of the merry-go-round. Wanting to stay clean, figure out a way to stay clean. And so anyway, so Ken's there.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, hey, I'm a Christian. I have like this little church. He's like, you don't have to go to it. That's not part of the deal, but I have a room for you. And
wow.
I lived with him for like 3 weeks. And then he had a house that he had just opened up that he wanted to put a few guys in. And he put me in there first. And I was there for 5 months by myself in like my own little house,
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And up here in Montana. And And so, but I ended up screwing that up. I had a relapse. I ended up screwing that up. I relapsed and had to see the judge again. And instead of sending me back to prison, and this was like my 4th violation, instead of sending me back to prison, my PO liked me so much that she fought for me to go to treatment again. And I ended up going to a treatment center called True North. And then that's the last time I've been to treatment and the last time I used.
What made you I just want to highlight Indigo says, when I hear stories where PO actually helps their charges get support, I'm assuming she said, it's nice because once you, it's so hard out there once you have a felony. And grateful, just as this incredible story, Sam's first time I've heard it. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you. Grateful.
What made that final treatment stick?
I finally dealt with this is a funny story actually, if to not to make light of it, but so I get into this, it's a 4-month long treatment program, and I hit it off with my drug counselor pretty good, and he's like, you know what, he's like, I'm going to sign you up for some anger management. I was like, man, I was like, because I'm like this, I'm like, hey guys, you know, I'm like
Right,
really
right.
happy, and yeah, like I've always been nice, even when I was like at my worst in the gang stuff. All my counselors and like case managers, they're like, when I see your file, which is like this thick, and everyone else's is like this thick, they're like, I didn't expect you to come through the door, you know, because I'm like,
Right.
hey man, how's it going, you know?
Yeah.
And but anyway, I hit it off. He's like, I'm gonna get you some anger management. I was like, dude, when have you ever seen me angry? He's like, well, we're just gonna see, you know, make sure. And I swear, like, it must have been like my third anger management session. I ended up throwing a chair across the room or something. He tells the story great. I still have breakfast with this guy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But I ended up throwing a chair across the room, and because he tried to push my buttons, you know, and he succeeded. And but anyways, I was in this anger management group, and we were talking about something, and I started talking about my wife and her getting killed by a drunk driver, and I just started crying, and it was like the first time I ever really cried about it. And it was like that ugly on the floor. Like, I left the group and went in, because it was like in a house, you know, the treatment center, went into the kitchen and just like cried for like literally like an hour, and just cried and cried.
Opened. Wow.
And I literally like had finally cried over losing her. Like really I dealt with it and had the tools to like work on me and what was going on with me at that time, and to start dealing with everything I had put myself through. And it was the most bizarre thing when people like say like, well, how were you able to deal with that? You know, you grieved for 22 years. What changed it? And I was like, oh, like anger management. What?
Like, huh? It doesn't seem to go with grief very much, but it sounds like, you know, you kind of get, there's, you know, the 5 stages of grief, and anger is one of them, you know? So
yeah. So yeah, it was nuts.
it kind of makes sense. So
yeah.
at what point did you, so what about Youre was that then?
So that was probably just after we were dealing with COVID. So I was in the treatment center during the summer of COVID. Yep.
Okay. 2020. So when did you get into therapy, or was it during some of these treatment center times that you started to?
It was during this treatment center. Okay. I'm still with the therapist that I had in that treatment center.
Oh, she's from there. Wow.
Okay. She left there. When I left there, she left there like 2 months afterwards. And so I went with her. She had asked me like, hey, you know, I'm leaving. She was part of my aftercare from there.
Okay.
And but she had said, you know, hey, I'm leaving True North, but if you have the option to pick another therapist, or you can come with me. They totally understand. You're in your aftercare portion. And I was like, I'm absolutely going with you. I don't want to like retell everything to someone else. And
such a pain in the ass.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it is. And yeah, I've been with her ever since.
That's nice.
Amazing. Yeah.
So she understands from you just getting clean to now.
Yeah. She knows all my bullshit. She knows my triggers. Like, she knows when I'm about to, like, even like the session we had today, like, she called me on a bunch of my bullshit right now. Not like of me bullshitting her, but just of like this pity pot place that I've put myself in. You know, I have no direction with my YouTube channel. I don't know if I'm going to retire from tattooing 100%. I don't, my marriage is falling apart, and I'm, not to bring all this up, right now, but like I've had some suicidal ideation the past month, there's just a lot of things, and she sees it all. She knows, she's, she asked me today, like, how's your suicidal ideation? And I just was like, the world would be a better place, without me. And, just dealing with that. It's, you remember like last week when I had that breakdown, it was like on I was doing the show. I wanted to do the show about like how, it was something about time, because we had just found out Galen's husband is having a scare, with the stuff that she's dealing with. And I don't know how much she's come out with that yet, but the stuff that she's dealing with, and it kind of like hit me with like, so I wanted to do a show on wasted time.
Yeah.
And it just like, and I felt really positive about it. And in the beginning, I felt really positive about the show. And then I ended up going down this rabbit hole of my own, everything that I'm going through right now. And I just like lost it, with Hazley and my marriage and this, everything I was going through. I mean, it just all came out in that show, and I snapped out of it the next day, and, I'm seeing my therapist again. But anyways, I started
stuck in our negative thought patterns, and it can be, we start going down that spiral, and the deeper you get, it can be, it's really hard clawing your way back out of that again. So everybody in here totally gets that, it's 100%. So when did you first start realizing that you had trauma from your prison time?
Right. So one day my therapist asked me, she's like, would you be interested in doing some EMDR? And I knew a little bit about that from a previous life that I kind of skipped over, of just me working in a psych hospital. It's kind of when EMDR first was like hitting scene with dual diagnosis patients. And I was like, yeah, sure. I go, I don't really think I have any trauma, really. My wife, I've lost my wife, but I've dealt with that, I feel like. And she's like, yeah, no, we're just going to like talk about some prison stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, we can do it. But, it's going to be, one session and I'm in and out, I ended up doing EMDR for a year and a half.
Oh, wow.
I mean, technically I'm still doing it. Yeah.
Did this occur after you kind of had your breakthrough with your grieving for your wife?
Yep, afterwards.
So you're like, okay, yes, I have dealt with that. I've gotten through that. So you were definite on that.
Yeah, and that was the only thing that I felt I had any trauma. I didn't even like the word trauma. I felt like it was overused. When people would say it, I would roll my eyes, I really did. I was like, I didn't realize how I'm not racist against it. It's not racist is not the word I want to use, but how I was real judgy about people when they would talk about trauma. I'd be like, oh God, here we go.
Well, it did get thrown around a lot. It's kind of like people saying narcissist right now. That's kind of the big thing. Because everybody's a narcissist if you say anything that's like even slightly selfish.
Yeah.
So I can understand that.
But come to find out, it's because it was just me avoiding stuff that I had going on. But to be fair, I didn't really realize I knew I had or felt I had trauma. But I still didn't realize why I would be getting these panicky bouts. I would get like these real like weird panic / manic phases. And then I would get kind of like down and depressed. I would let something, like I would let my wife like put me in a bad mood, and it wasn't her doing anything wrong. It was like me responding poorly to like whatever she, was doing or saying in my life. And
Mm-hmm.
I would, then I would get like these weird depressions. But I would pretend I wasn't depressed, you know, I would put up like this fog that everything was okay. And, but I would start thinking about relapse though then too. And so my therapist, but I was being honest with my therapist about it. So she was like, you know, wondering why I kept going into like these weird relapse modes. And so she wanted to try EMDR.
So she was seeing the trauma effects in you and saying, listen, we've got these symptoms. This has got to be stemming from something more than just what's going on in your life now.
Yeah. And I don't journal. She used to get me to try to journal, and I just sucked at journaling.
I do too. I mean, it's really helpful. And I think this is my way of journaling.
Yeah, maybe.
You know, yeah, because I start when I journal, it's like I will write everything that happened to me that day or whatever. And it could take me 2 hours. And I'm like, I don't have time for this. You know, it's like, I can't bullet point. You know, I've tried doing that, and people have suggested, and I'm like, well, that's not, I'm not going to remember what I meant by that. So I better expound upon that. Right. Again, 2 hours later. So but so she she wasn't thinking you were bipolar with this. And this is a hallmark of a good therapist, because she is looking at your stuff and saying, this isn't matching up. Life versus effects versus, you know, behavior. This is not matching up. Whereas I think a lot of us who have gone to therapists who aren't trauma informed, which I imagine she is because of the types of clientele she's worked with. That you come to them and you're like, well, I'm depressed, or I'm doing this or whatever. And then you find yourself dealing with your life as is, but never finding the root cause of things. And it's because these therapists aren't guiding you there, and they don't know to guide you there. So and I even told her that you had that.
Oh man, she's amazing. Had she told me that like the first couple of months, I would have pushed her away as a therapist, because I wouldn't have trusted her. But we were well into like our second year, or maybe it was like, we were into our second year when this was coming up, and she mentioned the T word to me, you know, and I was like, you know, hey, I trust you. Yeah. If you feel like there's something going on, let's do it. And, wow, man. And, you know, the man part of me, you know, that has, you know, like, ego, or I wouldn't say the man part. I'm just saying the ego part of me, doesn't like admitting like this stuff online, you know, cause I want to be like, you know, no, you know, like Tommy Siggs, you know, I want to be just like, you know what, go fuck yourself, trauma.
Right.
You know?
Right.
You know, that's how I want to be like. So, you know, like the men in my community, like no, Sam's like a real man. He doesn't have trauma, you know, but real men do have trauma. So maybe, you know, hopefully I can help alleviate some of that stigma that I used to like. And that's not like my purpose of being, you know, talking about this or anything, but it is one of the bonuses, right? Of that. Like I used to,
like 100%
be like that about trauma. But anyways, we started doing it, you know, and it took us, the first session didn't go like completely all that well, because, you know, I couldn't not laugh, you know, with her, because she was doing like her finger, and she would like bring it in or bring it out. I can't remember, but I think she would bring it. She would, you know, no, with her pen, she would go like this with her pen, and then she would like, you know, like bring it out, or no, she would bring it in, I think. Anyways, we're getting ready to start it over again. So, but after our session today, and I would start laughing, you know, and she'd be like, okay, you know, what are you thinking, you know? Well, she would have me focus on an issue. She'd be like, okay, let's just think about the morning. You know, you'd wake up for the day, in prison. And just think about, that morning time when you're waking up, and let's just start there. And man, we didn't get far. We got to the door opening up, and we spent like 2 months on just that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what was it about that for you? Was it just the recognition of the day starting and all the fear is gonna go and
from everything of me waking up in prison every morning, going from, me being, I felt like a successful guy, and not, in my addiction, not doing drugs, to disappointing my entire family from being in prison, disappointing my siblings that all look up to me. I'm their hero. Disrespecting my wife's life by becoming an addict and a drug dealer and a gang member. Just all of it.
it represented everything to you.
Yeah,
That's really interesting.
and then the fear of the unknown of, am I going to get killed today? Am I going to get put in the hospital today? Am I going to have to stab somebody today?
Yeah.
I didn't even grow up fighting, with my hands. I ended up becoming a good fighter in jail, after, hundreds of fights, but just being in fights. And guys go through prison not being in fights. It was just the route that I chose, I was getting in fights with people, and it's just the route that I chose, me, not being disrespected, like, hey, whoa, what the fuck do you think you are, buddy?
Right.
Like not a bully, but I was definitely bullying the bullies, in there. I took on that role of, like, I wasn't letting these wannabe tough guys, being in there and, extorting these kids or whatever,
So you're kind of protector of the
absolutely
weak.
I was. Yep. Absolutely I was.
Interesting. Yep. And that kind of got you on that path.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
So were there any other things that, whether EMDR or therapy in general, brought out from your prison time that you feel were real significant that you've had to deal with?
Yeah. The first time I seen someone get murdered was in prison. I've seen it before that. I had seen I know the word's not fatalic, but
fatality.
The first time I seen a fatal car crash, or not first time, but I had seen a fatal car crash in my life. And I always thought that was pretty traumatic for me. Not it didn't cause any trauma, but that's the most vicious thing I had ever seen in my life was that. But the first time I'd seen someone get murdered in prison, I didn't think it had affected me that much. It happened, I thought about it that night when I went to bed. I was like, okay, I'm in a dangerous place. I'm going to have to, tighten up my game. Mind my P's and Q's, but people will tell you this that have been to prison, and it sounds kind of cliche, but if you pay your bills, don't gamble unless you can afford it, don't run up big drug debts that you can't pay, and keep your word, don't tell people you're going to do things for them and not do them. Don't not follow through with the things you're going to, say you're going to do. And don't be a rat or a child molester, and you're good. You won't get stabbed in prison. You won't die in prison. Really, if you keep to that, you're golden. You won't die unless, you end up in a riot and you accidentally get stabbed or some bizarre thing.
Right.
But, I can't remember where I was going with that. Oh yeah. The first time I'd seen this guy get killed, it was pretty ruthless, and it was a gang hit. And, well, I guess that was the second one. The first one that I'd seen that affected me, that, that I was involved with, that I knew the person, and I knew the person who did it, and I knew the person who died.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, that affected me pretty bad. And I'd seen him get a piece of rebar put, I'm sorry, not to get too graphic, but put through his head, and then his head smashed, on the ground. And I'm just saying that not for effect, but just to know that it wasn't just seeing a guy get poked and he died. It was like it was a scene of violence that I couldn't not look at. I couldn't. It was bizarre, and it all slowed down for me, and I didn't think it affected me, but it affected me like a lot. It brought up that first car crash that I had seen that was really violent. It brought up me thinking about how my brother was killed when I was 17. I'm sorry, I totally skipped over that when I did my story.
Oh, geez, I'm so sorry.
He was killed in a car crash. He was 24. I was 17. It brought and I wasn't there for that car crash, but I just imagined how that must have been for him. That it just brought up a lot.
Well, and then you had your wife in a car crash, so yeah, the violent death aspect of things.
Yeah, just the violence of it, and it was all through EMDR, and it no other therapy would I have been able to understand how that affected me internally, except for EMDR. At least that's what I believe, because the way EMDR works is that you work through whatever, I think about that, so we started with, waking up that morning, and we worked a few weeks on that and the different things that brought up. And she wrote down everything that brought up, it brought up, me seeing my friend get killed, in that violent way. And then from that, and then when we make that the focal point and do the MDR, and then that brought up each separate thing of my brother getting, killed, of, my wife getting killed in a violent car crash, that fatal car crash that I'd seen. It brought up each one of those. And then each one of those things become a main topic of, until the way my therapist does it, we start off with a number between 1 and 10. How much is that affecting me physically and like emotionally? And it usually starts around like an 8 or a 9, and I just save 10 for like something, whatever, that I knew I hadn't felt yet.
Yeah.
Knowingly. And until I got to a comfort level of like around a 2 or a 1, then we would move on to the next thing,
Wow.
It's just an amazing way to have dealt with the unknown trauma that I had. And I couldn't have, I shouldn't say I couldn't have, but I'm so fortunate that I was able to do it with the therapist that I had.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I'm emotional right now about it is because I love her so much, and she's just an amazing therapist, and I just
it's wonderful that she's been so supportive of you. And I mean, she knows you so well after all this time.
Yeah.
I mean, there's something to be said for having that type of established relationship.
Yeah.
That you're able to do that. And it's totally natural to feel emotional about that, to have those people in our lives that care so much about us, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
it is.
You don't apologize. There's never any apologizing for that kind of stuff.
No, I know. It's
a natural reaction, right? I'm sorry, guys, I'm crying. But
I know it's ego, it's ego.
Yeah, we EMDR is actually grateful. This is a kind of a good segue. How do I find my thing? Jen says I absolutely love EMDR. She just can't afford it, and kind of in the same boat. But I know so many people that it's helped, and we spoke about this with Shindig on our last Wednesday's live. I'm not sure if I think you came in at the end of that.
I did. At the end.
So he's a men's counselor, and that he's been through it himself, and with our trauma informed counselor, and the success rates of it helping are just astronomical when you compare it to any other type of therapy, any other tool that therapy can use. And Grateful is wondering if you can explain a little bit, what does EMDR entail? She says, I'm not familiar with it, but so glad you have a wonderful therapist. So go ahead if you want to explain what your experience was getting into it.
Yeah. So I kind of talked a little bit about it. So it entails just like a starting point. And, where she's, after talking to me for, over a year, she just thought, okay, well, we'll just start with the beginning of your day, and we'll just go from there, because she knew there was some trauma in prison, because I'd always say, no, there's nothing. She's like, wait, you've seen people get killed. You've seen, you've gone through all this. You were just a normal guy before you went in there.
Right.
For the most
right.
There has to be something in there. And so she knew how to dig for it. And it just, so it just starts with like, there's something happens. What's the name for it? Eye movement derealization or something like that?
It's EMDR, eye movement desensitization and recalibration or something like that.
Yeah.
I keep messing up the ending too.
Some people use lights to do it. They have like a machine that goes back and forth. She just does it with a pen. And
so she doesn't have like you don't have those like handheld buzzery things or anything.
No, she just does it with her pen, and I follow it without moving my head. And then but I'm concentrating on what I'm thinking about, or eventually we got to like, let's say I'm concentrating on my friend getting killed, and I'm just watching it, and I'm focusing on that, and then she pulls away. And I just, I sit there, and I'm definitely planted to the earth, right? My feet are flat, my hands are flat, and I'm relaxed. We take deep breaths beforehand, and then she just asked me, it's like, what comes up for that? And, all kinds of different things come up, feelings about my friend, what I felt like I could have done differently to save him. I'm thinking of this one specific situation. When it was waiting for that door to open, when I was just working on that, the first things that came up were like, oh, I let my parents down. I'm in prison. I've let my siblings down, and there was a lot of tears and a lot of emotion that comes up each time something new comes up, and eventually nothing new comes up. And then that's when you start working on all the little sub traumas, right? Or they might be a trauma bigger than the one that you've just worked on. It might bring up something bigger that you've stuffed down. It just depends, on what comes up. You just don't know. I remember when we thought we were done completely, and I wanted to go. Keep
talking. I've got a hollering child, so I'll be right back, but keep talking.
Yep. I remember when I thought we were done completely. We had been doing this for over a year, and it's not every session. You can't do EMDR every single session. It's too much. It's too emotional. And one day I might get to therapy to my session. I might be bouncing off the walls. Maybe I had a good podcast. And because a lot of times if I have a good podcast, I'm real excited. And I might get there and be like, hey, yeah, I just had a great podcast. You guys, most of you guys know me. I'm just kind of like, I have these like manic phases I have. And, she'll know that it's not a good time for me to concentrate on EMDR. So it's not every single session for a year. But I remember thinking that we might have gotten to the end of it and something came up that last session. And I was like, oh man, I thought we were done. and we weren't. I can't remember what it was, but she definitely wrote it down and figured it out.
Yeah, grateful. I'd say a couple of shows ago when we did our live with Deborah Lee, she's a trauma-informed therapist. Towards the end, she really talks about the nuts and bolts of EMDR and how it works in the brain. So if you want to know more about that, I encourage you to check that out. About probably 3/4 of the way through that live video, and she does a great. She explains it really well in terms of exactly why this works, and it's pretty amazing. And she told the story of how the psychiatrist or psychologist who came up with it was actually just taking a walk in Central Park or something like that, and she was thinking about something, and she was just kind of scanning and looking at her surroundings and stuff, and realized she'd worked through this issue. And so was having to think on it afterwards and was like, why, I wonder how I was able to work. And then she realized she was moving her eyes back and forth. And that's how she developed the therapy. I think that's isn't that amazing?
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Just from something like, I hadn't either. Just from something like that. It's just amazing. And it has to do with when you're moving your eyes back and forth, your left and your right brain are being engaged. And so the thoughts are crossing that barrier back and forth. And it's pretty fascinating. And the stats of the people who try it, of them being significantly helped by it, are in the 60s, 70s percentiles, which is huge for that sort of thing.
Yeah. That's so neat. I
want to ask you just briefly, you had mentioned having kind of like almost like panic attacks. Did you notice yourself having other trauma responses that you didn't realize at the time were trauma responses once you had gotten out?
Well, aside from like just wanting to be drunk, like my addiction, like rearing its ugly head. I do obsess on things sometimes in my head, like my racing thoughts. I do that a lot with my show now, and I really, it has to stop, or else I'm never going to have a good podcast again if I don't get it under control. So I think going back to therapy is going to be useful. Not that I ever really left. I was just kind of put on probation for a little bit because I had missed so many. But I made a commitment to my therapist today that I would be back every week now.
Great.
It's needed. I'm just like all over the place, and but
and it doesn't help everybody, but it definitely helps a certain percentage of the population. And I think that you have her as someone to talk to, but you've also got EMDR. And what kind of other things have you, like we call them tools in your toolbox, what kind of other things have you learned from her or from the treatment center as you were going on that have helped you in your healing journey?
I do ask myself, playing the tape forward. I've gotten really good at before making a decision or before acting out on something, like, doing something that would be adverse to like my health or a decision I make in my life. I'm really good at playing that tape forward now and seeing like the outcome of it. I mean, not that I know, the outcome of every decision I would make is, or else, I would make all the right decisions. But I guess like before, like, going out and getting drunk or something, I know to play that tape forward that like, look, if I do that, then this is going to happen. Then this is going to happen. Things like that. I don't know. There was an instance where I told my wife like a week ago where I was like, babe, thank God I played that tape forward, or else it would have been a mess. And I can't remember what it was, but it's like the perfect example of
Right.
using that tool. And I also ask myself all the time before making decisions, at least I try to, is this furthering my mental health in a positive way? Like, before I make decisions about things, and that, as a lightweight, is this furthering my recovery, as an addict? And I also, because I am a Christian now, I also, ask myself, does this please God? And because my ego is so strong, I don't always follow through with, like, I know the correct answer, but I will go against it all the time. Like the recent Tommy stuff, I go against, I think I'm better at it than most are when they respond to that stuff. Because I'll just do a video that I'm not in, and when I just show receipts and like, look, at least I feel better that it's out there. And I didn't have to come out and just, say, fuck you, punk, you pussy bitch,
Right.
I
Our
don't
emotions get so invested in
exactly.
it. Yeah.
But I know I have to do something because I'm not that well put together to where I can just be,
Yeah.
let them, that whole let them movement now, I'm no spokesperson for let them. Even though I tattoo it all the time.
Oh, really?
Oh, I do that tattoo so often. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny. Hey Misha, how are you? And to everybody else who's joined. So your religion, I mean, this is something that I know is very important to you. And at what point did you hit that? At what point did that start being something that you relied on in your healing journey?
Probably it was when the old man was standing there at the airport with the dog, and he said, hey, I'm Ken. You're gonna live with me. That was like, because I was just on my knees in prison, like, God, if you're real, show yourself. And I felt like that was his way of doing that. And now, even though I did have a relapse after that, I had decided, like, I'm going to walk the rest of my life with Christ. And then, after that relapse, I had already met some people then. And after that relapse, I really leaned on those Christian friends that I had made. And then when I got out, I was baptized and found a church and started going to church more. Which, if I'm honest, we haven't been to church in a while. Lately, we're just kind of doing our own thing with Bible studies and things like that. Churches aren't perfect, pastors make bad decisions, and I'm still friends with our pastor, but he made a really bad decision regarding me and my family. And I haven't been able to forgive him yet for it. And so, but I can't hold.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
You can't.
No, I mean, I can't hold, God responsible for that.
Well, I think of it a lot like a therapist. I mean, you find a place where you feel like you belong, right? You feel like these people get you. I mean, there's, churches that you can go into that they're thumping politics, and that wouldn't be a type of place for me. And, God or the universe or, whatever you choose to believe in. I think if we truly are feeling it, that, it's wherever we are. And
that's right.
We don't have to have that organized group that we go to, but it certainly can help with the connection aspect, right? I mean, in-person connection, as a lot of us connect online, but, as we'll say, I don't have friends who are here. All my friends are elsewhere. So having somebody who is still right in front of you.
Well, because, important. And, spiritual warfare is real. I believe it to be real. Even if you don't believe in God, I think we can all believe that there's definitely evil woes amongst us, I guess, for lack of a better term. Like there's dark energy that wants to, pull you away from happiness, I guess. But I would say that it is spiritual warfare, and and I'm always hesitant to say these things because I don't want to like push people away, because I do want to be a leader of souls to Christ, but Satan wants us to isolate ourselves. But that just goes to show the intelligence of the Bible and how it's divine, because these are things that ring true in other religions and other therapeutic successes, I guess, that you're not alone. Like even my therapist today, she's like, okay, we need to reconnect you with somebody, and she just means like someone outside of her, and like, how can we get you to connect, and we thought of a short-term goal, and I'm going to try to achieve that goal in the next couple of days, of how I'm going to reconnect with with someone, and I'm going to do that. But anyways,
hey, your religion, these are, everyone here knows that this is your religion. It's your story. It's part of who you are. And
yeah,
so,
good.
These are this is what you espouse to, right?
Yeah, I'm not ashamed to be it. Yeah, I'm not ashamed.
People are atheists.
I'm always hesitant because I don't want to push people away from the conversation, and so I get really weird about it. And I wish I was better at it than others of mine, and because I have no qualms in saying like I'm loud and proud to follow Christ, but when I start talking about the details of it, like I don't know, I'm super weird about it, like, because I don't want to push people away,
right?
Because I want them to stay engaged with my conversation, with the things that I'm talking about, and it's weird. I'm still figuring that out. So
walking the line between this is what I believe and this is how it's helping me to proselytizing.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I can understand that. I gotta know, when did you start tattooing?
Oh yeah, this is a great story. I've been tattooing a long time. So I started tattooing before I even worked for Microsoft, before I was even a grip in Hollywood.
Oh
yeah,
wow.
I used to tattoo on my friends because I've always been an artist, and I used to airbrush on cars. Like in my neighborhood days with my abuelita, with my grandmother in the Mexican gangs. I used to airbrush their cars, and one of the homies got me a tattoo machine, and we to do a tattoo on him. There's a lot more to that story, but basically that's how it went down. And so I just tattooed on all the guys who I skateboarded with and surfed with, and even at Microsoft, I would have little tattoo parties at the house and would tattoo on people.
Okay.
And then
So long time.
And then when I became a drug trafficker, I was laundering money through tattoo shop. I would open tattoo shops, and I would launder money through the tattoo shops.
Oh, so you've had tattoo shops way back to.
Yeah.
This isn't anything recent. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought maybe I had seen that picture, or you had talked about like your first tattoo shop that you opened after prison. And for some reason I was kind of thinking that was the first one that you had, but no, this goes.
It was the first legit one. Well, I
totally legal one.
The first legit one. It wasn't even the first legit one, but it was the first one I had since I've been out. Yeah. I mean, I can't tell the details of the story, but a bank had been robbed to open that joint. Not by me, but
Right,
Yeah.
right. No, that's totally
Anyways,
fine. But
it's all bad.
so regardless to say, you've been doing it a long time, and
Yeah.
if no one's seen Sammy's work, he's amazing. Honestly, I've seen your
Thanks.
artistry, and I think it's just absolutely wonderful. And I don't know if you caught it, but Jen was just saying in the chat the other day, she goes, man, we need to get Sam to bring a tattoo gun with him when he comes to Michigan. And I'm like, already done.
Oh yeah, no, that's a done deal.
Because she wants to get one by you too. So
Yeah,
you've
I
definitely
can't
got
wait to
the
work.
customers lined up in Michigan.
Yeah, my hand to God, I swear to God, there will be a time when all of us are sitting in a kitchen and I'm tattooing you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's gonna happen. That's gonna happen.
100%. Yeah.
Yep.
We don't know when, we don't know how, but at some point in the future, it will happen.
Yep, that's right.
It won't be in my kitchen because I have one of those itty bitty galley kitchens. So
no,
it's
a
like,
hotel room or
like,
something. Yeah.
But I have a nice living room you guys can borrow. So
Oh well, yeah, there we go. There we go.
I always say my kitchen, it's like, and it barely fit 2 people in it. It's the biggest thing I hate about. I love everything else about this place, but can't stand that aspect of it.
Yeah.
So we've been on almost a couple hours here, but is there anything kind of, as you're sitting here today and you're looking at your healing journey, and looking at all the trauma that you've now understand that you have been through, is there anything that you pinpoint? I know you talked about EMDR and your religion, just in terms of what's helping you now.
Yeah. 3 weeks ago, or let's just say a month ago, I would have said my YouTube channel. I really would have said that, because I have the connection I have made with everyone. And somehow it's not a problem. But somehow I'm so, things are kind of like falling apart around me out here in the real world, like with, what I'm going to do moving forward to provide for myself and my family. That like I'm overthinking stuff, and now and things are just kind of really effed up, and I'm trying to 1 second. That I wish I could say that, but now I feel like it's not helping me anymore. It's becoming not a problem, because I've made it the problem. My community and everyone is still the same. Everyone's still the same loving, supportive people. But now I've have gone into like this weird headspace to where I'm not good enough. I'm not doing the right shows. Do you know what I mean? And
I know exactly what you mean. And I think anybody worth their salt who has been on here for any length of time knows exactly what you mean. And especially anybody who's gone through trauma, because the self-doubt, the self-deprecation, the negative thoughts that we had, just a couple months ago, really, that I was at there. I was really, my numbers were down, the viewerships were down. I was, getting only a handful of people in the chats, and I'm wondering, what am I doing? What am I doing wrong? So, I go off on that little bit just to kind of give you a little bit of comfort that it's not just you.
I appreciate that. And I do understand that, and it's going to get better. I got to quit over planning and just trying to, and then I'm late because I'm dealing with life stuff, or, I'm whatever, or I don't plan at all. Not that there has to be like this specific plan for a show, but my vision for the show is like something completely different than I feel like than what everyone else has for my show. And I just have to do my show. And if I lose people, I do, and it sucks because I love everybody. And like I don't know, and I'm bleeding. Like I've lost 100 subscribers in 4 days, and I've only done 2 shows, and they were decent shows. So I have no idea. I got to stop trying to figure it out and just do me and let the chips fall where they may.
Exactly.
The problem with my show is that my show hasn't grown organically like most shows. I've like inherited like people from 2 other podcasters, and I want to keep all of them, but everyone had their own ideas of the shows that they came from. And I've tried to adapt to that. And I'm not even talking about the recovery, because my plan was for a recovery show. So it's not even about that. The show needs to be recovery, but I also wanted to do more politics, and people hate politics, so I'm either going to start a different channel and just have fun with my little politics show, I don't know. But I know they're not going to mesh well with the communities that I've like inherited.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
I do. But I'll say this, like I knew doing a lot of true crime here wasn't going to mesh with this community. There's certain cases that I have covered on here, and there's certain cases I will still bring up to this. But I knew I had to really have another place to store them, or to be able to do them. And similar to yours, but do what's in your heart, do what you want. And yeah, you may lose half of those people, but you know what? The people you will gain will be the people who want to see what you're doing and what is true to you. And
then you have more of a consistent show that will grow.
And I find that is the only way to be able to do this long term. When I started doing what I really thought people wanted, or what other channels were covering, and trying to do this and that and I wasn't doing things I was very interested in, or my heart wasn't in, it was hard. It just, I won't say I dreaded the show, but I didn't want to, do this as much. And that makes it really difficult, and sent me into some spirals, myself. And there's been a few times I've had to cancel because I was just going through it myself. And I think that you will find more consistency with wanting to do your show and being able to do your show if you're doing it from your heart. You're doing what you want to do. And I really encourage you to just kind of sit back and say, listen, audience aside, what's my vision for my channel? What do I want?
Yeah.
And that's what you need to make your channel.
Yeah.
And those people who like it still will stay. Those people who don't will go elsewhere. And, unfortunately for them, that your vision wasn't for them. But you will then gain an audience who wants what you have to offer. Yeah. And I truly believe that's the only way to make it here long term. You know, for the people who are like us, who aren't just here for putting out entertainment value, who are just regurgitating whatever happens to be in the news that day. Yeah.
Yeah. True crime was my original vision for my Legal Livewire channel, was true crime, but mostly the legal part of it, like what happens to these guys who, sadly, take out their whole family. Like I wanted to follow their court, and then that turned into like daily dockets, because I would get a lot of views with those. And I'm like, okay, when I started seeing money coming in, I was like, oh wow, these docket shows are doing really good, but I'm doing less true crime. And so like I adjusted, and then I wasn't happy, because then I'm just doing dockets, I'm not doing, I'm not making my little mini documentaries that I like to make. And they are just adjustments. But after the bars is going to be recovery, and I'm going to start interviewing, because I wanted to, from the very beginning, interview people getting out of prison and people that are like new in recovery. And I just wanted to give them hope and show them what a cliff too high to jump off of, what it looks like. And so that was my original goal.
I think that there's definitely a market for that. 100%. And Misha says she loved the call-in show, so you definitely. I
did too.
That back as well.
That is definitely coming back with Zoom. That way, there can be a waiting room, and people can, come in, and they don't have to show their face. They can just, be like a call. Right. But
so, Shell says she agrees. The call-in show was really great. So
cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely.
And that was fun. It was fun, man. It was fun for me, for sure.
I didn't know what number to call. I would have called in, but I got into you late, and you can only scroll back so far in the comments, right? And
I had it scrolling on the bottom.
Oh,
but I didn't. Yeah,
I must have missed it, or either it wasn't scrolling when I was in, or I totally missed it, which could be the case too. It's like something's so obvious. I'm looking in the chat for everybody, and it's just like so obvious.
Get your shit together, Mac.
Oh, it's just all over the place. But we've talked about doing some collabs with true crime, because it's definitely something that is something we both really enjoy.
I watched back our show we did the other day, and we look good on there talking about legal shit. So, and we sounded good, and we didn't come off like a couple of idiots. We were good.
Well, you come at it from one angle, and I come at it from another angle. No, you didn't either. I looked at both of it. We both come at it from a little bit different of an angle, and I think that's, important. You have a little bit more of a passion in regards to things. And when we start talking about legal stuff, I have the passion here, right? When we start talking about legal stuff, my brain sits back and
it was perfect.
I start into my analytical mode again.
Well, it was perfect, because I would be like, and you can tell that this judge is no good. And then you would bring it back to like, well, I mean, maybe, and I was like, oh yeah, there's that. You did it like 3 times. I was like, oh yeah, I guess there's that. I was like, no, shit. I was like, oh yeah, I guess she does have to file that. Yeah.
Well, I've definitely got some cases. I know we talked about the Alexander case, but which I covered briefly on this channel when they first got arrested. But there's definitely some other cases. I don't know if you have been following. I think I mentioned it briefly in a text, but the Canadian hockey players from the junior team, the junior national team.
I have that on a post-it note.
Yeah, they're in trial. They're in trial right now.
Yeah.
And the other guy, his trial's been postponed, so we could, that's something we could cover background for him, but his trial probably won't start until next year.
Yep.
But really fascinating on him. But yeah, the Canadian players, since they're going, I'd love to, and we've got so many Canadians here.
Yeah.
So if
the Canads.
If any of you Canucks is that proper? I don't know. Canadians?
Canucks, yeah. Canucks.
Especially in Michigan, because you're above us. If any of you have any insight from being in Canada and seeing your local, review of it or whatever, I'd love to hear what you have to say in regards to that.
Yeah. I just seen that question.
Yeah, she says, Sammy, forgive me if you answer this. Have you done any software development after getting out of prison? You built a lot of skills in this area. If you don't know, Janet is a software person. So she had a very extensive career.
No, just before I went off the rails and ended my career, we were trying to develop and I'm going to geek out for a second. We were trying to develop a systems management server that would speak to NT and Novell at the same time. So it was like taking the CNE and the NT, and so they would communicate, and so you could manage both of their systems with the same systems management server. I do believe that did happen eventually. And I was supposed to be a part of that beta team for that. But alas, I wasn't, because I wasn't there. But I did play a huge part on the Windows 95 release. I was a part of integrating the internet into the shell of the application, so, there's DOS, then there's Windows, and then the internet. But played a big part of integrating the IE Explorer into the shell of Windows. And that was a lot of fun, man. Talking about the beginning of the internet. I
was just saying, crazy to talk about Windows 95 and DOS and everything getting integrated. Yeah. That's just like,
yeah. Well, because there was Windows 3.11, and then 3.11 for work groups was just before Windows 95. And we went from 3 disks of Windows to 10 disks. I'm talking floppies. Floppy disks.
I remember.
Code writers were I talk about this. Code writers back then were so meticulous, because you only had so much room to write code, to write a program. And then when CD-ROMs came, everything had a whistle and a movement and an animation. And I was like, oh, you guys have it made. You guys have it made. Because you could just do whatever you want,
Oh my goodness. I had a thought and it just went, Misha says, I want to know how far you made it in the Gates of Hell game.
Not far.
Oh, I know. It was from another thing. Echo is wondering about the call-in show. Could you give everybody your email for it's Inside the Mind
X at Gmail.
So Echo,
and that's a whole other channel I have that I haven't started, called Inside the Mind.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's a whole nother channel.
Echo, I would suggest connecting with Sam through his email, and maybe you guys can talk up. And we have a bunch of people, so they have just connected with your channel and they've subbed up. So you may have been losing some, but you've been gaining them tonight. So
wow, thank you so much. I hope not to let you down. I will. I will. I promise.
There's your email, Misha. Misha put that up. Auntie Monkey Pants is in the house.
I know. I love
hello. I love that name too. Every time you say it and you laugh, I laugh.
Auntie Monkey Pants.
It just makes you.
Do you know the story behind her name? Their pants, the pajamas.
I heard that. I thought that was the most adorable thing. Because some of these people you look at their name and go,
it's my favorite story.
How did you? It's very, very, very cute. Oh my goodness.
Says, did you say you live, Jesus? I try to.
That too. Chris says, I started on a Commodore 60 or a Commodore PET. Me too, actually. Me too. We had one in school.
My neighbor had a Commodore. I started on a Gateway. It had the old math coprocessor. It wasn't even a chip. It was a Gateway 240X SX or something. I can't remember.
I take it back. The first computer we ever had in our school, and we didn't have it for very long before they got a Commodore PET, and then eventually my parents got a Commodore 64. Right? That was a thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah. 64 was.
I started on a Trash 80. I know.
Jeez.
Iowa schools really believe in education for the most part, and they definitely, I don't even think we had discs or anything that we worked off of at that point.
Kim started on an Etch-a-Sketch.
I sucked at Etch-a-Sketch. I got no artistic challenge. I should say no. I got very little.
I did say I love Jesus, and I do very much so.
I have very little artistic talent. My brother got it all. My mother is a wonderful artist. My brother is an incredible artist. He can look at something and draw it to scale. It's just
that's cool.
To me, amazing, because I can barely draw a straight line with a ruler. But actually, I
Yeah.
can't. That's the big joke in my family. So, yeah. I think we're about done with the heavy talk. If Hazley wants to come in, you can certainly bring her, or we can just go ahead and end the
I
stream.
think they just left for somewhere. I thought she was coming. I thought she came in to tell me something. I said, I'm almost done. She's like, oh, okay.
No worries.
I mean, they're cool with doing whatever.
Okay.
But isn't Hazley great? I mean, and when I start doubting myself, it's all because I'm worried about her, but I'm good. I'm good. Don't worry. I'm good.
Well, we all do. I mean, people, I think I got so many accolades after I won that award that I kind of thought that things would take off after that, or that something else would happen, right? Because of that. But it was actually kind of the opposite. I was stagnant in growth. I was losing viewers, losing people in the chat. Just, I wasn't losing subs, but I just wasn't gaining any, but people weren't showing up. And I'm just like,
YouTube is so finicky, man. But listen, I read a lot of YouTube news and projections, and a lot of like the big YouTubers, they're all saying lives are where it's at. Like even like those 12-minute long, 12-minute videos, 12-minute like little news blasts. Those are all a thing of the past. There will be no more big channel, million plus subscribers of those channels. That live is where it's at. This is the future. This is, so maybe, our timing is just right, or maybe we're a tiny bit late. I don't know, but
part of me worries a little bit about that, because I worry that so many people are using the lives for connection instead of real life. When I say real life, I mean in-person connection.
Yeah.
And because we have become such a digital society, just in terms of people's mental health. I mean, this is a great outlet for people who don't have another way to connect with people, and that's fabulous. And if it was nothing versus this, absolutely take this. My concern becomes when this becomes a substitution for also putting ourselves out there in the real world. And I'm as guilty as that of another person. I mean, I work remotely. My son loves doing errands and stuff, and I don't have to go out all that often, right? And I do my YouTube channel and I research online for it. There's no need for me to interact with the community unless I so choose. So it's definitely a pitfall that I have to watch.
Well, and here's the deal too. Like I already struggle like keeping up with the community to how I want to be. Like I want to be able to answer every email on like right away. I want to be able to see every chat message if someone has a question, for me, or if they have a problem or an issue. And I was on a live the other day, and they had like 2,400 people in the live. I couldn't imagine. I mean, it wasn't like a community like this to where we all like care for each other. It was just, a slam bam, F Trump, no F, Kamala or whatever. But I couldn't imagine there being that many people. So for that, I would want the channel to be small,
because at that point it's just a platform to speak, right? I mean,
right. And I don't have anything that important to say that I would want 1 million people to see,
Yeah. I mean, in my, for me, for surviving together, my desire for growth is just it's evidence the message is getting people. Okie dokie. More people realize that it's, available. It's not about growth for growth's sake or any of those. I don't have any illusions that I'm going to be making my millions here on YouTube or anything, or that even capable of supporting me. So when I have, times like this where I've been off work since last Wednesday, and that's, I don't work. Bills don't get paid. So it's a concern for me as well. And so balancing, having a day job with doing this. So I completely understand the struggles and how our everyday lives and everyday stressors can kind of get in the way a little bit of what we end up doing.
Well, the my legal channel. So there's a guy who started like a month before me that doing the same stuff that I do. And he's like making like, I don't know, like 22,000 a month or something like that. Doing the same thing. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. My legal channel could be doing that if I was doing 2 daily videos every day. Of course.
My gosh.
Yeah. And when I started after the bars, there was like 3 months before that, I took a month off. And because I was getting like 70,000 views, 100,000 views on a video like every other day. And then the rest were getting like 20,000 views, 14,000 views, 20,000 views. And they were making good money, to where and I was like, okay, cool. Wow. I'm going to retire.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And, but then I started after the bars, and then I got addicted to after the bars, and I set aside the other channel. But this is a different kind of, after the bars is a different kind of channel. It's not the same kind of video, like get those kind of views. And then I was like, oh man, what am I going to do? So now I'm trying to like reset my legal channel. Then I thought about combining the both, and there's no way that would ever work.
No,
the algorithm would be too confused.
Yeah,
it'd be too confused. So,
and you got people looking for different stuff.
I'm just going to pray on. Yep.
Yeah.
Or
well, Sammy, thank you so much for.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
You're still doing some tattooing now as well, right?
Yeah, but it's making me miserable. So I don't think I'm going to be doing much more. Not the actual tattooing itself. It's dealing with customers. I just don't have it in me to deal with customers anymore. Yep. So, but thank you so much for having me. I was looking forward to this for a while.
Understand. So. Absolutely. So yeah, if you guys want to see Sam and I collab more, whether it is on mental health stuff or whether it's doing true crime stuff, this is my shout out to you guys. Leave a comment.
Yeah.
Let us know. Let us know what you want to see, what you like. And if you haven't subscribed, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, to Sammy's channel, definitely give it a check out. And if you can give a thumbs up here on the channel, actually give a thumbs down. The algorithm doesn't care. It just wants to see that you've clicked something. But leave a comment and let us know some stuff. And the algorithm loves that as well. So really appreciate it. So we've thrown up your channel and your email, Sam. So thank you very much. And we'll keep talking. And I'm sure there'll be some mental health stuff that we'll want to address.
I love doing the mental health stuff. I really do. Yeah.
Well, Shindig wants to do some more stuff with us as well. And, he's a men's addiction recovery counselor. So, awesome. I mean, boom, I can just imagine having the three of us on. I think that would be absolutely amazing.
It would be.
To talk about that and to talk about specifically addiction recovery. We kind of covered mental health, men's mental health in general was our last one. So doing something like that. So thank you guys. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Sammy. Please remember, you are worthy, you are valuable, and you are loved just the way you are for who you are. So hugs and love from me, guys. enjoy our outro that our wonderful Jimena has made. I can thank Misha
did
for
she?
our wonderful. Yeah, she did our
so
outro.
cool.
The intro was made by Misha, but the outro was made by it's the song. We haven't got video to it yet, but Jimena made the outro. So yeah,
Well, I
enjoy
love
that.
both of them. I love both of
Absolutely.
them.
A special
Yep.
place in my heart for you guys.
Yep.
Surviving together, never alone. We will see you on Saturday. Bye.
Bye, guys. Bye, Chris.
Through the fire, through the rain, we have walked through endless pain, but we stand, we rise again, stronger now, we break the chain, surviving together, hearts open wide, lifting each other through every tide. The past may have shaped us, but it won't define. Together we heal, together we shine. Every tear, every scar tells the story of who we are. Not just survivors, but warriors too. With love as our armor, we see this through. We see you, we hear you, and we believe in you. Surviving together, hearts open wide, lifting each other through every tide. The past may have shaped us, but it won't define. Together we heal, together we shine. We see you, we hear